What has social media done to us? I'm Marco Perri. Welcome to the Perri platform. Today, we're joined by a very special guest, Marouane. I'm going to call him a social media expert. But before we get into more about him, let's talk about why you're interested in this topic, sir.
Well, I would say social media is becoming part of everyone's life, like encapsulates a big portion of your life. And how far are we going to get into that over the next 10 years, 20 years? Like,
Mhm.
how is it going to develop?
And one thing that interests me about social media in particular is like the different level of understanding the generations have. So you have kids now who are growing up with social media who probably know more about it than even us, like the millennials. And you have those who are older than us doing things that we wouldn't consider to be appropriate. And we're probably doing stuff that's cringe to younger kids. So just the ways we use these technologies, it's so different depending on how old we are and what generation we grew up in. Makes me think, right? Like the way you're brought up, maybe that has some impact on what you use social media for. What do you think?
Oh, is it the way you're brought up or the time in which you were born? The social media form who you are as a child. Like, I see these kids nowadays, like, social media is forming them more than their parents are. Like, everyone's
Interesting.
become, it's like this whole group thing where you're on social media, you're with your friends, you're at home, right? Your parents are there. Yeah, you're on your phone talking to your friends and being exposed to things that your parents don't know you're being exposed to. It's become like a driver kind of thing. Like, parents are taking a back seat and social media is taking a front seat for these kids.
It's interesting you mentioned that social media is forming them because now that you bring that up, it makes
Yeah.
me think about like influencers and people that these kids idolize. Everyone needs a role model, especially when you're younger. And
Agree.
nowadays, kids don't really look to real life figures. Maybe they still look to their parents, but outside of that, social media idols, the Kardashians come to mind, maybe some gamers. What kind of effects is that having on kids?
You can be a child and have a great like, that's a pro of social media. There can be a great influence on, like, YouTube or Instagram, someone that you really look up to and has great ideals. However, there are some people as well that don't have the best ideals, and you could be attracted to that. So I feel it's like a flip of the coin. I don't know, whoever you're attracted to, I guess, as a kid, if you find them interesting and they have great ideals, then good for you. But if you're attracted to someone on YouTube and you're following them every single day and they're teaching you how to do bad things, you're gonna start doing bad things eventually.
And it begs the question too. So there are positive role models and negative ones. I wonder what the ratio is for every one positive role model, how many negative ones are. And my own anecdotal experience, it really feels like there are more negative role models on social media than positive ones because really the cap it takes to gain popularity based on doing something bad versus something good is very different. If you post a video of you donating to charity, you might get some likes and some comments here and there. But if you post a video of you doing something goofy, like you trying to rob a McDonald's or you trying to like
The whole
campaign
six
and cause a problem,
the whole
that's
six
gonna blow
bud
up.
page, right, on Instagram.
Hmm.
It's a bunch of stupid things people are doing, yet they have so much recognition because it's just stupid, you know?
It's
Look
true.
look at look at that whole Logan Paul fiesta. I don't know if you know about the Logan Paul thing that happened to him with his vlog.
And tell us
Where,
about it.
yeah, so he was vlogging around. I think it was in Japan, and it was this so-called suicide forest where people go in and commit suicide, unfortunately.
Hmm.
So they just go in there and they hang themselves, apparently, man. I'm not too sure.
Hmm.
And he decided, the smart guy, honestly, though, I don't know if this was planned or not, but anyways, he decided to go into the forest with his crew and vlog this one dude that hung himself and showed his face in the YouTube video that he posted. That shit got
Whoa.
taken down in like 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes, I think so. Like, I'm just trying to think behind that thought process. I'm sure he knew there's going to be huge backlash. Like, he's not that dumb. He had like already 10 million followers on YouTube. I'm sure he had a manager. I'm sure he had a PR guy.
Hmm.
And yet he still posted it.
And now you're touching on something else too, something that the kids call clout. People on social media will do these stupid things, these risky things,
Yeah.
like that girl who threw a chair off of her apartment building onto the highway. They're doing these silly things, things that we wouldn't typically do in our regular lives because they want to get viewers, they want to get followers. And maybe that's one of the negatives we can touch on a little bit later, but the influence. People want to get viewed. And as we touched on before, it seems like the easiest way to get viewed is to do something stupid.
This is true. I mean, it kind of taps into like human psychology, I guess. People are just more intrigued by extravagant, stupid shit. I think that's what it may be. And then when you have that on your phone and you could get to see like stupid videos of people falling down and throwing chairs off balcony ceilings and everything. That's what keeps you hooked on your phone. It really dives into the whole psychology, like how people think and how people like what people are attracted to, and you have all of that on your phone. You have
Yeah,
all of
that's
that
true.
on social media, you know?
Instant access, yeah. So
Instant
now
access.
just to, level the landscape for the audience, we're going to talk about some of the pros of social media. Then we're going to get to the cons that we believe there are. And after that, we're going to weigh those two things and see really what has social media done to us. Is it more good? Is it more bad? Here are the individual aspects. And I want to start with some of the good things that social media has done for us because it's easy to trash on it, but it is two-sided. There are some positives. So why don't you start by telling me what you think?
Ooh, positives of social media. I feel it can help a lot of causes. For example, I'd say like voter participation, and if we're gonna get political in this,
Hmm.
getting people in like being on YouTube and being able to see different parties and their point of views, and seeing other people's point of views on those point of views on the comment section, and you could really gouge like a good population, good sample size of people and what they think about certain things. So in that aspect, it's pretty cool. Where you could really just debate with anyone around the world or wherever it be in your country and see their point of views and compare it to yours and come to a conclusion, even though you don't know this person face to face. So that's
Yeah,
definitely one of the pros of social media.
I agree with
What do you
that.
think,
It's
man?
it's like an instant access thing. You have access to all this information that you otherwise would not have. If you wanted to learn about a party, you have to go on their website, and obviously that's going to be tailored to what they want to show you. You're gonna have to go to
Absolutely.
the newspaper, but nowadays nobody really reads a newspaper. Social media gives you a convenient access point to not only hear about what the parties say, but what your peers think as well. But you touched on the aspect of debating with other people around the world or even locally. I really wonder though, how civil is that? From what I've seen online, it's not much debating and discussion. It's a lot of trolling, a lot of flaming. What do you think?
I guess, man, wherever you have positive people talking about factual things, you'll have dumbass people talking about trolly things. I think it just brings to light like what humans actually are, you know?
Hmm.
Like I always had this philosophy of like if there's one good person or maybe two good people, let's be optimistic. If there's two good people, there's gonna be definitely one bad person out there. You know,
Yeah,
so if there's one good point of view, there's gonna be another shitty point of view that's gonna be posted as well. And it's like it's anonymous on social media. You could post whatever the hell you want. People will not know who you are, and you feel comfortable. You're in bed, right? Wherever pops to your head,
hmm,
bang, right there. It's on social media. So it just really goes to show how people actually are. I guess it's like I don't know, man. It's exposing who humans actually are. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but what do you
yeah.
think?
It does make sense because there is a certain social conduct that you have to adhere to when you're talking to somebody in person. If you're talking to someone in person, they bring up an
Very
idea.
true.
You can't just say that's super stupid and then you trigger them because there's a risk of an altercation now. You might get into a fight with them. It might be physical, it might be an argument, you might make a spectacle, you might even make them cry. And even that's a lot to see. To see somebody crying because of the words you said. But
Yeah,
on social media, it takes away all the consequences, the good or the bad, they're all gone. All there is your action, and that's it. You don't get to see anything other than that. And that's what I think is one of the downsides of social, not
yeah,
seeing the consequences.
that's very true. That's an interesting way to look at it, man. Like it's a whole different society that you're living in.
Because these are some of the rules that we've always governed our communication by. We see these social cues in people, the body language, and if we're doing something, a logical person, if you're doing something that is hurting someone, you can see that emotionally, physically, whatever, and you're a logical person, you're gonna likely stop doing that because you realize it's not worth it. And that's if it's not a heated argument. But
Yeah,
online, it's always a heated argument because there's no barrier there. And
that's so true, man.
it brings me to another pro, maybe, of social media, and
Yeah,
that's that we do have instant access to each other. Maybe people who you don't typically connect with, you can now stay in touch with because it's easy. You can send them a message, send them a meme. Yeah, it's not as hard as going to their house or anything like that.
very interesting. But just backtracking back on that point, you were talking about the trolls on social media
Hmm.
and how you can just post it. How do you think that affects the actual troll when he goes out of his room or like gets off his phone and actually has to talk with people? Do you think that has an effect on the way you and I speak in person.
I think it does because
Yes.
if it's
Say,
if it's
sorry,
repeated
go.
behavior, if it's
Yeah.
repeated behavior on the part of the troll, and they're getting used to this, they're getting used to evoking negative emotions online, they can get hooked on that. And they go out in the real world and they're going to be trying to find ways to do that in the real world as well.
Hmm. But don't you feel like, think about this for a second here, okay? You have trolls that have this urge to like say negative shit and like just to hate on people,
Mm-hmm.
okay? So their outlet for that is social media. But as soon as they're off that social media and they get their fix, like you know what I'm saying? Like they get that like negative energy out of them, they go out in the real world and they're just normal ass people. Like they're normal people, like they're all happy and smiley.
Mm-hmm.
But once they unleash all that negative talk that they have inside of them on social media, like they're just all happy person in real life. Like, does that make any sense?
It does. It
Do you
does.
see that
So
at all?
I'm not sure if I've seen it per se, but it makes sense theoretically. Like social media is an outlet and they channel all the negative emotions into it. And once that's all gone, they're free to go about their everyday lives. And I'm having a problem though classifying that. Is that a positive or a negative?
I don't know, man. That could be a little both if you think about it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you're hurting people on social media. Well, I mean, it depends. People, okay, there's always sensitive people in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You can say one bad comment and it'll like ruin your day. Unfortunately, people just like that. And then other people that have thicker skin and they'll read a bad comment and be like, oh, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But for those sensitive people, I feel like that's a negative.
Yeah, I
But
100% agree. Mm-hmm.
you know what I'm saying? But if that person's posting all that bad shit just as an outlet and have going on with their day for the rest of the day, I guess that's a positive
Mm-hmm.
for, you know, just society and his group of friends in real life.
I guess one way you can try to measure that is you determine what would he be likely to do in real life versus what he's done online, and you try to gauge the level of impact it's had on the people. So if he would go out,
Yeah.
if he couldn't express himself on social media, and he would go out into the real world and do something like drive super fast on the highway and get into an accident, that's not good. Versus him trolling people online, maybe you can make a distinction there. And I kind of want to ask though, what
Hmm.
other positives are there about social media? I feel like we're talking about like we're already getting into like the gray territory. Is there any other like clearly good stuff?
Well, you see this whole LinkedIn thing now too, right? Where you could
Mhm.
post your whole resume and your academic portfolio and your work experiences on a social media page.
And now that we're talking about
Wow.
careers, some people actually
Hmm.
make a living off social media. You can do it. You have Instagram models. All they do is post, like they do like product placement, they do modeling, they do a bunch of these things. They're kind of like hobbies, but they get paid pretty well for doing that. And even gamers, a lot of them are able to live off that because of things like Twitch and YouTube. So maybe it's opening up some alternate career paths for people.
I agree to that. But if you think about it, that's a very small percentage of people are hyper successful on social media. It's great for them. Like, of course, they're making millions. They're happy.
Mhm.
They're getting the recognition. But is it good for the rest of everyone else? I know I'm always getting like I'm veering towards negative, but like, is Kim Kardashian like the best model for young girls growing up? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I feel like people are very divided on that question. A lot of people would say no, the Kardashians are terrible role models. And there are some people who would say they're amazing role models. What it does bring to mind, though, is just the sheer potential of social media. You get millions of followers on this one person. And if that person's actually advocating some good stuff, it can be a positive, changing factor for the whole world. Even those charity pages, the legit ones, who are like,
Yeah.
share this post and we'll plant a tree. Obviously, you have the
That's
scam ones
tough
too.
though, man. Nowadays, like, who knows what's real and what's not? I've heard many stories of like pages just utilizing that, like this picture once, and we'll plant a tree, or we'll take a freaking plastic bag out of the ocean. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Then when they get a lot of
what?
followers, they turn to a meme. They turn to a meme page after.
Yeah, like honestly, like, where can you draw the line? Like, maybe the first ones were legit, but nowadays, like, how do you know if it's legit or not? You need some kind of social proof of that when it comes to that, you know?
Yeah, there has to be some type of evidence. But what I keep getting back to when I'm thinking
Yeah.
about this is that social media itself really isn't good or bad. It's just the way we use it. Like social media is just a tool, but the way we're using it might not be
Hmm.
optimal because it has so much potential, really. But we've kind of let it slide off a little bit, I feel.
I would say it's It's all up for interpretation. Like it all depends on how you're feeling, and I feel like it amplifies whatever you're feeling. Like if you're depressed at home and you want to go out and do stuff, and you pop on your Instagram or your Snapchat and you see these people doing these great things,
Hmm.
like that'll make you depressed. Like you'll be like, shit, I'm missing out. These people are having fun and I'm at home doing nothing. But then if you're in a great mindset and you're out running every day, you're doing your workouts, you have everything planned out, and you see these people doing the same thing on social media. You see these great like influencers on social media working out all the time, doing their thing. It motivates you to keep going. So it really just like I feel like it amplifies however you're feeling in your life, you know?
Yeah, I think amplification is a very true side effect of social media. I just wonder though if it amplifies more for the good and more for the bad, because on social media,
Mm-hmm.
people are posting their highlight reels. No
Mm-hmm.
one's really posting the bad stuff that happens to them or the regular day things that we all go through, like traffic and whatnot. So we're seeing all these feeds of everyone doing awesome stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe it's only a couple of seconds, and we're comparing that to our everyday lives. Maybe the perspective has to change a little bit on that.
I have this great quote that I just found on this article here.
Hmm.
I'll read it out to you. Let's see what you think.
Hmm.
The more grounded you are in your authentic value as a human being, the less likely you are to be a heavy user of social media and also to be negatively affected by it. On the flip side, this doctor adds that if you struggle with feelings of insecurity and find yourself putting a lot of time and effort into portraying yourself a particular way on social media,
Hmm.
then you are more vulnerable and would benefit profoundly from regular breaks. You will
Yeah.
have the space needed to move towards your true self. So does it disconnect you? It's basically this person saying this quote is saying that the more you're on social media, the more you disconnect from your true self.
It kind of makes sense for me. Like the first part about it is if you're already grounded, you know who you are, you're less likely to be susceptible. So that kind of makes sense. I really have to think about that more a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. But the second part I do feel like is true right away, that if you're not super confident in who you are and you do have some type of self-esteem issues and you're on social media a lot, as you said, that's really an amplifier. You're going to feel worse because it goes back to the highlight reel thing. Everyone's posting the awesome things about themselves, them looking pretty. That's all you see really. And you compare that to yourselves now because you will presumably have body image problem maybe or a
Yeah.
self-esteem type issue. And they're going to see all that and it'll just make things worse. So I think that quote actually does make sense.
That's super interesting, man. Yeah. Like some people use that as an escape too.
They live
Like I'm not gonna
vicariously.
lie, I had a phase where I was using it as an escape, where
Mhm.
you just have nothing going on and you see these people doing these great things on YouTube, or you're like stuck watching NBA games. Like
Mhm.
it's like you're just stuck in this loop of just like you feel you're part of something.
So this method of escapism, living almost vicariously through other popular characters, maybe that's a positive of social media. What do you think?
Maybe a short-term positive, like maybe keeping you like intrigued and like not sad for a little while, but if you catch yourself after like a couple months just staring at your screen all the time, wishing you were that person while you're sitting at home, like
Mhm.
being a lazy ass, doing absolutely nothing, that shit can get like I think that could get very bad if you get stuck in that loop and all you see yourself doing is like going back home and watching other people's lives and
Yeah.
wishing you were them and
Mhm.
not actually like going out and doing tasks to get to that level. You're
Mhm.
content with watching other people do that kind of stuff. Man, that shit could get toxic. I feel like that's really bad, like
Yeah,
long term wise.
I agree. So maybe that's like a mixed bag thing. And I have one more thing for like this mixed bag category. I find
Yeah.
that social media, especially for me, it's acted as a sort of memory bank. You can just scroll through, see some of the cool stuff that you did personally, some photos from whenever high school, university, your first job. And it kind of makes keeping track and inventory of your life milestones easy. Before you had to have like an album or something like that.
Yeah.
Now you're supposed to photo online. But that thing, as I said, it's a mixed bag because especially we've seen recently digging into people's past and finding stuff to hold against them is kind of trending now. People are
Yeah.
using it as a political tool.
Look at that whole Justin Trudeau thing. I'm sure you're gonna bring
Exactly.
that up. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm wondering about that because so this the Trudeau blackface and the brownface photos, they really came out from a time where social media wasn't super prominent. So I'm wondering, the
Yeah.
politicians of the future, the millennials, how much stuff are people going to be able to pull up on them?
take that in, man. Honestly, like these kids growing up right now, like they're immersed in it. There's no getting out of it. They're posting these pictures, man, and it's being recorded on social media. Like once you post something, it's there, and people and like if people want to find that shit, they'll find it. So these kids growing up taking these pictures, not knowing that one day they might want to become president. It's kind of funny to think about. It's interesting, like 20 years down the line, to see this 30-year-old president or 40-year-old president come to be, and just them having a bunch of like files when they were kids growing up of pictures of them doing the stupid shit. Because everyone posts things of them doing stupid shit eventually, you know? You know, like they'll have that baggage, and the way politics are going to be able to utilize that, it's going to be interesting to see, man. Who knows how it's going to look like 20 years down the line.
I kind of have a theory on how it's going to look like. So if we actually go down that rabbit hole, which I think should be avoided at all costs, the only people who are going to be able to survive in politics are the shameless. It's really a shaming tactic. We're going to pull a picture of you doing something silly to make you feel bad, to make everyone else think you're a bad person, and it's supposed to shame you. Now, if you create that environment, everyone with a monocle of shame really isn't going to be compatible for that, because as you mentioned, almost everyone has something online. If you dig through anybody's history, you can find something. The only people who can survive in an environment like that are shameless people who are borderline psychotic, who don't care about what anyone thinks about them, and it's going to create a very toxic politics.
Current president of the United States, man. It's already starting. It's already starting, man.
And
like we have the president of the United States is arguably the biggest troll on earth.
Twitter, get your updates on Twitter.
Man, I got Twitter. I follow this guy, and I did not know the kind of shit he'd post on Twitter, but he is a troll, like the definition of a troll, and he's a president of the United States. That's the beginning of what's to be in the future. And I don't know if our future is looking too nice, to be honest.
And you do have to give it to him, though. He's actually so good at being a troll that some people don't even realize they're getting trolled by him.
I mean, that's the definition of a troll, right?
Yeah.
Being able to trigger people without them like knowing it's their intent.
That's true. You have like the amateur trolls who give it away, but as you mentioned, he is pretty pro at that.
Like Donald Trump, what he's doing is like I find it low-key genius what he's doing. Like you have to be somewhat intelligent. Like you have to be intelligent. You have to be a little bit intelligent to become the president of the like most dominant country in the world. It takes something to get to that, and he did it. So something definitely worked. You know, like he's appealing to the trolls of the world. He is, and it just goes to show how many of them exist, and how many people like are okay with a president trolling people.
Yeah, and one more thing about like the politics of the United States, it's so polarized. Like right now, it's literally the epitome of toxic. You can't even have these conversations. So it's very polarized over there. I actually feel when things cool down, like in 10, 20 years, the election of Donald Trump is going to be a case study. People are going to study that and try to figure out exactly how it happened. And they're going to be able to do it more rationally. Because right now, everyone's very emotional. People are very triggered about it. But when we look at it, I think the same is going to be said about China, actually. China is going to be a case study because they've been able to form a very unique method, a very unique system, and they're doing some really big things in the world right now. Economically, they're also doing some really bad things too, but it's a unique thing to learn from. I think Trump is in that same category. He had a unique system. You've never seen a president like this before.
Yeah. I don't know if you watched that documentary called The Great Hack.
Yeah, I've seen that.
You've seen that, right? And how he was the first president or in the first elections ever where they utilized analytical data from Facebook, Google, all these social media platforms to basically stratify, like where they were categorizing groups of people and literally catering political messages to these certain groups of people so that it'll make them more likely to vote for them or for Donald Trump's party. And it fucking worked, man. And it worked in Brexit too. It worked for Trump and it worked in Brexit. I just goes to show the power of social media. It's insane. Like, what are your takes about that whole documentary thing?
Yeah, it was very interesting. Cambridge Analytica. And just the way so the first thing about social media too that came up is people are vastly unaware of just how much data these companies have on them, just in general. those companies will not just take the info that you give, but they will actually scalp data off of you too, maybe based on what you type and whatnot. And they have these profiles on people. I wouldn't be surprised if Google, Facebook, and all those giants combined can make a book about you. They can write an autobiography about you better than you can do yourself. That's how far the data collection has gone. And this is a really case study type material. In the future, it's going to be studied heavily. This was social media and its impact on things like elections, some of the most important things in the whole world.
I was just taking a second to soak that in. Yeah. Social media has an impact on the highest of levels.
Yeah,
and it's definitely the future, man. You gotta know how to defend yourself from that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I don't know if you really can, though. Can you
defend yourself from social media? You can just get off social media, but I don't think that's
the only solution. That's the only solution.
People like it too much, but now I kind of want to talk about some of the negatives, and I realize that we've done that a lot with the positives, so maybe it doesn't matter anymore. We can just go back and forth. But I want to talk about the social media mobs that I mentioned before. So maybe particularly Twitter. So there are actually multiple mobs, maybe mobs isn't the right word, but groups of thinking, groups of people who share a common ideology. And there really is becoming a prominent way of expressing yourself on these social media platforms. They've become the norm. There are smaller subgroups, so one is becoming very dominant, and it's a politically correct trend. If you don't fit in with the mob mentality and they see you, especially if you're a celebrity, and you post something that doesn't fit with what they think, they will band together and they're going to feed off each other's negative emotion and they're going to come for you. We've seen it happen multiple times with a lot of prominent talking figures, even in politics. Ben Shapiro, for example, people are actively misrepresenting what he says, posting fake news about him. And even if he says something popular or something that's logical on his podcast, people will edit it and take a soundbite out of context and post that, and they'll get the mob riled up. It's become a weapon almost.
It's like a hub for propaganda. Every little group can create their own propaganda on YouTube and get to increase their numbers, basically. Go for the vulnerable, go for the uneducated, and just increase their numbers. That's what it is on social media. It's a bunch of groups of people, and it's so easily accessible. You could be a person with the craziest train of thought, and have that same person somewhere else in the world thinking the exact same way as you. Think about the same weird shit you are, and have a whole group formed around that.
Yeah, no, it's true. And
social media cults, man. It's social media cults. They exist.
It's true. And I'm actually worrying. I'm worrying that certain cults are becoming more than just cults, especially on things like Twitter. I've seen it happen before. There's emerging a cult or a way of thinking that is just the norm now.
I don't know how much of it is a norm or just them being loud as fuck about it.
That's actually a good point too. I think it's a perceived norm. And it might be just the vocal minority who's causing a scene. But just the way social media works, it's perceived as a norm, perceived as a mass. And I'm not too sure if you've seen it yourself. But from what I've seen with a lot of political figures, certain ways of thinking that are not necessarily bad are being completely demonized and ostracized out. And I really wonder what that's doing for, first of all, honest conversation and really thinking about ideas. And second, freedom of speech. If you can't really talk about ideas because everyone's worried about getting triggered, well, how do you convince that person that their idea is wrong? You know what I mean? The best way of actually going about that is having a logical conversation with somebody. But what I see on social media is the opposite. People get mad and they attack you. And when you attack somebody with an ideology who you think is bad, what do you think happens? They just harden because you haven't shown them a better way. All you've done is try to tear them down.
That goes back to our point we were talking about how if social media influences the way you are in real life, I think it does. Like you bringing up that point where you have a group of people behind your train of thought, like a group of people behind you on social media that believe the same things you do. It gives you the sense of confidence in what you believe, right?
Yeah.
It gives you the sense of like, I don't know, like you have to be really open-minded to be able to take different point of views and be okay with it and expand on it. But there's a lot of people out there that if they have 2 or 3 people that believe in what they say, there's nothing in the fucking world that's going to change your minds. So you see these people going out doing some crazy shit in real life and like that can become really detrimental. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if what do you think about that?
Yeah, I honestly agree. And that's why I think there has to be more open discussion because this polarization is in part leading to people going out and doing those kind of things because people are feeling that they're not, well, first of all, it's so polarized. Everyone is battling each other. I think it's more so in America.
Mm-hmm.
If someone disagrees with you, they are your enemy. And if someone's your enemy, you don't really see them as a fellow citizen. You just see them as someone who's trying to undermine you. And that's very dangerous. It leads to people who aren't taking you as a human anymore, and they're willing to do crazy stuff out in the open. And this trend of just polarization and I would say toxicity is leading to that. And it comes from social media in a vast number. And it kind of leads me to my next point. Another thing that I'm seeing on social media is some people will say, oh, social media is an echo chamber. I'm not really too sure if I think it's true, but I don't think it's news though. People have been in echo chambers for a very long time. You can look at television news. If you only watch CNN or you only watch Fox, that's an echo chamber.
Mm-hmm.
You might do the same on social media, only follow certain people, only get one side of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very dangerous too, because you start believing, as you said, that only your ideas are right. There's no other way of thinking and whatnot. People back you.
Yep.
But as I said before, I'm not too sure it's really an echo chamber per se. It seems to be more like an amplifier. And we talked about that. It really does amplify your thoughts because you get all this instant gratification, people who have the same ideas as you, and you only follow them and they follow you.
Yep.
So yeah, you start amplifying, multiplying.
If you're thinking about some weird stuff
Mm-hmm.
and you have some other people behind you thinking about that same weird stuff,
Mm-hmm.
man, like, just think about it. Like, it'll make you feel that what you're doing is okay, and you'll continue doing those weird things. Like, I don't want to be mentioning whatever weird thing it is, but human beings do weird shit, and like just having a group behind you definitely amplifies that. Like,
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. I was reading this book on psychology,
Mm-hmm.
and how like these whole groups of people thinking like, like there's a 2012 people that thought the world would end in 2012.
I remember that.
And it's like every single year, every single month, there's a group of people that believe in this kind of stuff. Like the world's going to end by the end of July 21st, 2018, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like you see on Facebook groups of people truly believing in that,
Mm-hmm.
or they have like this one thing they latch onto because they don't have that much in their life, unfortunately, but they like they latch onto this one concept.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, damn, like I'm right. Like what I believe is true because look, there's like 20 other people in this group that believe the same shit I do.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Get into groups. These guys go into meetings. This book I was reading up on, like there was this group of 50 people. It was they believed an asteroid would hit the world, the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
It was like in 2018 or whatever year it was. So they would meet up in groups once a week, all the time, march down the streets. There's just some crazy shit, and they truly all believed that the day was coming.
There's actually some other examples too that came to my mind. Like you have anti-vaxxers who are pretty much that exact thing, right? People who believe in these crazy things, and they were like in the past, they were able to really get big because of social media. Like they found each other. In real life, it'd be hard to really, determine who is an anti-vaxxer and who's not, unless you go up to someone and ask them that. But on social media, you can see their feed. You can see if they're in like similar groups, and people banded together and it became a movement. Anti-vaxxing was a thing. It still is today, actually, but social media has tried to put a lid on that. And even like climate denial, there's so many examples of these large groups of people who just banded together. I guess social media makes
What about the Area 51 raid?
Oh yeah.
That was about that?
Cool. I heard that no one actually showed up to that.
Man, that's the kind of event that you see on social media where you're like I kind of wish these people go through with it, so we all get to see what's actually in Area 51.
Those guys would have got shot by the military straight.
Okay, say that happened.
Mm-hmm.
What would be the repercussions of that? That'd be some weird shit, man. Like imagine, honestly, like hundreds of people lining up and marching through Area 51, and then they have to shoot all these guys down. They wouldn't. Would you? Okay, honestly, do you think they would shoot them down, or what would they do?
Now that you mention it, and if I'm going to be serious about thinking about what they would do, I don't think they would get shot, because that would actually be like cause for a rebellion in the United States. People would actually be up in arms, and they would like overthrow the government for that.
I feel like they'd throw some kind of like some sleeping gas kind of shit in there, like throwing out some bombs or like some gas bombs to make everyone fall asleep before or like I don't know, something like that. Definitely not shoot them though.
Yeah, it's true. And one more thing that I realized too about Area 51 is that it's in the middle of a desert. Some people might not even make it.
You brought up desert, man. I brought up that whole that fire Was that the fire festival thing?
No, on the island, right? Yeah.
How people could utilize social media to make millions of dollars. I mean, it was illegal.
Hmm.
I didn't get to watch the whole documentary. I really need to watch it though.
Hmm.
But how this guy just was able to amplify this thing that was non-existing and
Yeah.
get people to spend their hard ass money for it.
Hmm.
And they show up to an island where there's absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
That
It's
is
crazy.
insane. These guys, how much money did they end up spending to go on the island?
I don't know the exact figures, but it was being marketed as the party of the century. People
Yeah.
probably dished out for that.
That is insane. Like, there's literally no factual proof
Hmm.
of it existing, and this guy was able to get people to like put their card information down and pay with their money.
Yeah, it's that FOMO. That's another thing too, like fear of missing out. People were too hyped up about, oh, we don't want to miss the fire festival. So everyone put up the money and then they got trolled because it's not really based on fact anymore. They didn't really care. They just wanted to be part of the movement. And not being part of it was too much of a burden, so they put the money up.
That's insane, man. That like how much of that whole hype factor that was born through social media, don't you think?
Yeah, they actually did some I remember looking into what they did, their marketing tactics. They use a lot of influencers like models,
Yeah.
very popular models with like millions of followers, and they were the ones who are promoting it. So if you see someone like that, it's the influencer culture too. People will automatically assume they have credibility. They're only thinking about the best for us, but it's not true. They get paid. They're thinking about how to make more money oftentimes. And yeah, I don't really believe in trusting in influencers like that. You have to do more research on it yourself to make sure the product that you're getting is actually legit. There's so many fitness influencers too trying to sell you like
Yeah.
diet supplements and whatever. If you just buy that because you trust the influencer, probably a bad idea.
Man, social media is definitely like an extra step for a lot of things. Like just we were talking about money and budgeting and how people are utilizing influencers to make money. How much
Hmm.
money do you think was like generated through social media alone? Like it's a whole like economic tool, man.
It is. It is.
Like it's like consumerism on crack, bro.
Like I know the money is in the billions, especially if you're going to count advertisements. Like Facebook ads alone, that's already $1 billion initiative for them. Then every social media platform has some ads, and you have influencers making money out of that too. It's in the billions for sure.
Well,
And
man, I think I read this article, this stat that I think it was in 2018, data surpassed oil as the most, what was it, the most valuable resource on Earth. Like raw data
mhm,
is worth more than anything on Earth. Like that's insane to think about.
yeah, it really is just a string of numbers and digits more than a real life asset. It's crazy.
It's because with that information that you have from that one person or that group of people, you can target ads to sell them certain products that you know will have like a 15 to 20 to whatever X amount of percentage of sales.
Hmm.
Like you could guarantee yourself money
Hmm.
from portraying an ad to this group of people.
Yeah,
How insane is that? Just from the data that you gathered of them on social media.
yeah.
We're in a new, it's a new age, man.
So now let's move on to our final thoughts on the matter. I'll just go first. I really do think that social media, as we've talked about, has done more bad to us than good. To me, that's pretty evident. But at the same time, I feel like social media itself really isn't inherently bad or good. It's the way we use it. And just the culture around social media, I think it has to change. It really is just a tool with a lot of potential. But the way it's been used so far, as I just said, I don't think it's been overly good.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a lot of bad stuff. How about you?
Like, I kind of mentioned this before, but I truly feel like social media is just an extension of what society is. It's like it's a parallel. It's an alternate universe, you know?
Hmm.
It's where a lot of thoughts are shared, where a lot of feelings are heard, like a lot exists in this virtual world that really in true life doesn't exist, right? Like factually in front of us doesn't exist,
Hmm.
but exists in this different world that has just been born like I would say 15 years ago max. It's still
Hmm.
new. Like, and I don't think something new is, you can't pull all the benefits out of this new thing. Like, it'll take time. I think eventually, maybe down the line, hopefully, if we like have faith in humans,
Hmm.
optimistic here, that down the line, a couple years down the line, 10, 20, 30, 100 years down the line, where social media is obviously still going to be prominent, it'll be used more for the good than it is for the bad, you know? I just think right now we're still in the beginning stages of how to utilize it, how to live in it, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree 100%. That was very well said. And I think it encapsulates a lot of what we talked about. So thanks for joining me, Marwan. It was great talking to you.
Thank you, Marco. Fun time.
We'll see you soon.